Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Gary Utley, Red River's Demand Gens Manager, and we're here today for best practices for deploying Microsoft Teams across your organization. This presentation will be hosted on Microsoft Teams live event platform. A little housekeeping we want to do today. If you have any questions or you want to get part of the presentation, we'd love to hear it. All you have to do is hit the Q&A on the right hand side. All you have to do is when you submit, make sure your full name's there so we can respond directly to you. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Brian Charles, our design architect for Microsoft Solution. Today, he's going to be presenting and providing information about the best practices and what you need to know for deploying Microsoft Teams for your organization. Brian, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. As Gary mentioned, my name is Brian Charles. I'm the design architect for Microsoft Solutions over here at Red River. And we're going to be going through some of the best practices that you might want to be thinking about in your organization if you want to start utilizing Microsoft Teams. We're going to see if your environment is actually ready for Microsoft Teams, showcase some best practices or some questions that you might want to answer while you're going through. We're going to get into what should you be thinking about as far as end user training and adoption in the Teams, and also looking at things like proper management or maintenance of Microsoft Teams once you've gone ahead and started utilizing it. Before we do that, though, we're just going to give a brief overview of the Teams platform. And a lot of you guys have probably seen this. There's been a whole lot of hubbub around Microsoft Teams for the past couple of years now. And starting around February or so, due to the social distancing requirements that a lot of us have had to have, the Teams platform has just skyrocketed. But inside the platform here, there's Microsoft Teams is basically the hub for teamwork inside of the Microsoft 365 platform. It brings various components of the platform directly into one space for your users in your organization to be able to talk to each other. Over on the left-hand side, we'll start with the chat, meetings, or calling. And you may notice now that the meetings button has been recently updated into the calendar because it's bringing your Office 365 calendar and directly putting it inside of the platform. Chatting is for direct peer-to-peer communication between yourself, another user in your organization, external users, or even a group of people if you want to have a quick conversation. Calendar will bring in your calendar where you can schedule meetings or like what we've done here today, schedule a live event. And you can even bring your phone system into Teams if you want it to be a full PBX in the cloud hosted by Microsoft. Inside of for collaboration, we have all sorts of things that we could bring in sort of Microsoft Teams. By default, if you spin up a team, it'll go ahead and allow you to start putting files and other Microsoft documents inside the platform where you can collaborate directly with your coworkers or your external consultants and modify documents in the Teams interface and use it as a storage file repository. Now, while you're doing this, if you're an IT admin out there and you're kind of worried about what does this mean, there is a very robust Microsoft Teams and Skype for Business Admin Center that gives you lots of information to do some basic configurations, troubleshooting, and things of the sort. And if you have used some other third-party application that's SaaS-based or something like that, Microsoft Teams APIs allow you to bring the applications you're using today into this shared interface. So it really is that one-stop shop for getting things done inside of your company. So again, there has been an absolute explosive growth in the use of Microsoft Teams, and a lot of people had this platform and they weren't really sure what to do with it. And then when we all started working from home, we quickly figured out that this robust platform can be used to keep our organizations up and running. There's now 75 million daily users, and that's just growing every day. That's 31 million new subscribers or daily users in Microsoft Teams in just a month. So you can use this platform with confidence. The platform basically almost doubled in users, and Microsoft was able to span for it. And if you're using an on-prem configuration or something that you put out there and had to worry about changing from a platform where maybe 25% of your staff was remote to now all of a sudden 100% of your staff was remote. There could be a lot of other things that you need to worry about, but moving SaaS allows you to expand. There's been over 1,000% increase in video calling. People who just didn't use video calling in the past, now that they're not used to seeing their coworkers every day, are turning on their video, and there's just been massive growth there. And there's been a 200% increase in weekly meetings for Microsoft Teams. So if you want to utilize it, how do you know if you're ready? Well, there's a few things you got to look through first. Our recommendation, having rolled out Microsoft platform for a really long time, we've been doing Office 365 work back from when it was called BPOS, and now that it's transitioned into Microsoft 365, we've updated our offerings and things like that. And the primary thing that you really want to do is get your cloud identity established. Most organizations have Active Directory today, and extending your local Active Directory into Office 365 is that first step for that login capability for your users, really making sure that the logins that they're using today extend out into the cloud. We also recommend you identify an internal use case. So if we just start putting applications out inside the environment, a lot of people don't know what it's used for, they may not ever use it. Well, why am all of a sudden I'm being asked to use this? So identifying what's a small use case, an immediate need that you can go ahead and put into place to start driving value immediately, and then users will start seeing what else it could do with it. You also want to make sure that your licensing aligns with the desired features for that use case. Most Office 365 packages and all Microsoft 365 packages come with Teams for your organization. However, certain features like adding a dial-in number for audio conference bridge if you wanted to replace some competing product and consolidate your utilities, that dial-in number requires an upgrade to the Teams license and auto conferencing. So it's making sure you have an understanding of the features you want to put inside the environment, make available for your users so that you can turn that on beforehand, and also understand any security or compliance requirements that you may have. Microsoft Teams is able to take advantage of the robust security features and functionality that's in the Microsoft 365 suite. And some organizations have different needs than others. Some organizations have the ability to just open it up and allow people to work, where others may have some form of compliance and regulations that they aren't able to do. Like they might not be able to invite external users to collaborate. They might not be able to share various types of documentation. And having a good understanding of that information before you set this up is extremely important. So once you walk through that and you know, okay, so we have all that worked out, I have a rough roadmap of what we want to do with Teams, there's some best practices for actually enabling it. So we've gotten our identities established. However, we need to understand the relationship between Teams and other parts of the Microsoft suite. So when you stand up a team inside of Microsoft Teams, a lot of other things are happening in the background. There's an Office 365 group that's created, a SharePoint document repository. When you're peer-to-peer chatting between users, and you put a file in there to collaborate with a coworker, that's actually using OneDrive. There's also calendars, OneNote Planner, and a lot of other functionality. I've consulted with a lot of organizations who wanted to really slow the deployment of Teams because it didn't want to overwhelm their users, and there was a lot of features that they were hoping to be able to utilize, but they weren't available to them, like restricting the OneDrive use or the SharePoint use, or not even having your mailbox inside of Office 365 won't allow you to utilize the deep integration with your calendar. So really understanding how all of it's connected for the use case that you're using is extremely important. There's also knowing that you set those security settings prior to just releasing it. And again, this is only really for people who have that need. If you don't really have that need, there is a little bit of housekeeping things that you can turn on, but it's not nearly as important. But you don't want to run into a situation where you rolled this out and you didn't think about that, and all of a sudden you have a data leak situation on your hand that now you have to try to clean up. You want to determine who can create a group or a team. Now, there's some organizations, again, this is going to be specific to you. The way, a very interesting way to utilize Microsoft Teams is just to turn it on and let your end users go. One of the great things about that is users are going to get in there and they're going to figure out what this utility is used for them. I've worked with some organizations who, come March, when everyone had to work from home, they just said, we don't know what we're going to do, and we don't have a good VPN or remote strategy, so we'll just turn on Teams and see what happens. And after about a month or so of work, they figured out, well, we can just move all of our files there, and we can move all of our meetings and our collaboration, and all of a sudden Teams became this platform that enabled them for this remote use, and that was available because they just opened it up. However, there's, again, some organizations who want to keep that controlled a little bit more. If you do something like that, you will more than certainly have this thing called Teams sprawl, where next thing you know, you have 50 different teams, 90 of, and most of them have test in the title, and you don't know where data is stored, and you're trying to wrap your head around it, and the IT team is scratching their heads trying to figure out, how do I get this in control? You need to figure out if you're an organization that's allowed to open it up for people to really just start utilizing and collaborating, or if you do need to put a lid on it. And the good thing about Teams is no matter which company you're in, you have the settings and configurations to be able to do that. You also want to determine if there's any sort of naming conventions that you want to have. Do you want to prepend groups to have a certain name, or how we want to make sure that things are set up, because you don't want a team to be spun up with maybe not the best use for work name or something like that, and now we have to figure out, okay, what data is in there? Did we violate any company policies or things like that? And also if there's any governance that you want to turn on. So in addition to figuring out what our naming conventions are going to be for the various departments in our organization, do we want to have automated policies in place that retire groups if no one has been utilizing them for a certain amount of time? One of the great things about that is you have the ability to spin up a group or a team for an immediate use case. And you can set a policy that, hey, this use case has retired, and we don't want to have to worry about remembering to turn it all off and it's showing up in everybody's list. Well, maybe if there's been no activity for 6 months, it'll email the owners of the group and say, hey, no one's used this for 6 months. Do you want to keep it, or do you want to get rid of it? And then it can get rid of it automatically. So setting some good governance inside the environment can really help relieve some of that stress for the managers of the platform, so they don't have to go, oh, did I forget to turn something off? So now that we have Teams out in our organization, we've made sure that we're prepared. We want to make sure that we are keeping our users up to speed on different capabilities that we want to utilize inside our company with Microsoft Teams. So one of the most important things that you can do here is really get in touch with the Microsoft 365 adoption reports. This will allow you to keep a good lid on the organization and identify maybe some Teams champions. So even though you as an organization have come in and said, this is what we're going to be using Teams for, you might be surprised with the creativity of the people in your company. And they may have started turning on and using it for completely different ways. Various organization processes and procedures can be replaced by Teams. I know when we started using Teams over at Red River, we completely revamped the way that we use the way that we do sales engineering and the whole entire pre-sales process by using some of the other things like Planner that's inside of Teams to put due dates and things, and keeping everything in one place and organized so everyone knows what they're utilizing. And then the communication directly about initiatives inside of Teams cut down email tremendously. You also look at additional use cases that you've maybe identified. So if there's a team or a user in the company that you've just seen has crazy use inside of the team, they're making a whole lot of meetings, they have a lot of interaction with it, talk to them, see what they're doing, and they may bring something to light that other teams in the organization could start utilizing, and then you can take that to them as well. And also, one of the things that we recommend and we actually provide here at Red River is self-help training. So what you have the ability to do is to have a portal that your users can stay up to speed on new features, targeted campaigns from your organization to highlight things that maybe you want to be able to do in the company. And again, the platform is changing all the time. We've seen a whole host of new features that have come out since Teams has been released, and all this is being upgraded by Microsoft in the background. So your IT folks, they don't have to go through painful upgrade cycles and maintenance windows. These features just come available to your users as needed. So managing and maintaining Microsoft Teams, and it sounds a little bit similar to some of the things that we've talked about. Governance is very important. And making sure that you have an idea as to how we want to use things, how things are going to be retired, cleaning it up as it goes along, and making sure nobody's they're not sharing trade secrets and things like that is important. And these dashboards and the e-discovery capabilities inside of Microsoft 365 are there for you to do that sort of thing. Over on the screen, we have a screenshot of the Microsoft 365 reporting capabilities that we've seen. So you get to see active users inside the environment from the basic reportings, and then there's deep integration with some pre-staged reports from Microsoft using Power BI to show you very in-depth things about the environment, which teams are being used, which aren't being used. You can proactively go and shut them down. How are people using Teams? You'll be able to see, are people using one-to-one peer-to-peer chat? Are they doing meetings? Are they doing Teams? Like Teams channels and collaboration there. So all the information that you need, not just for Teams, but all the other things, all the other features inside the Microsoft 365 suite as well, to keep a handle of that. It'll also give you some reporting about license assignment to help you manage your cost, cost inside of the platform. That's handy because if you've had a high turnover, sometimes more licenses get provisioned than you need. And in the cloud, there's no reason to be spending things. There's no reason to be spending money on things you're not using, because you can turn it up and turn it down as needed. So if you have 10 licenses that you're paying for and no one's assigned, you can come in here and just go ahead and say, oh, let me go ahead and turn those off, and it'll remind you to do that. As well as keeping on top of the new features and new suites that Microsoft may have in order to help you save some money, but get some of the features that you were looking for. A great example of that is recently Microsoft rebranded a lot of the Office 365 suites into the Microsoft 365 suites. And some of the things that they did, it wasn't just a naming rebrand. There was actually some changes that they made to some of what were formerly the small business line versus the enterprise line, that brought some features into the small business line that make it so a lot of organizations are able to downsize their licensing from the enterprise plans into the business plans and maintain the features that they have. Microsoft 365 Business Premium is a perfect example of that. It now has Azure Active Directory Premium embedded into the product, which will allow you to have Azure multi-factor authentication with conditional access policies for that secure access, so you can control secure access into the cloud. It also now allows you to attach phone system to small business plans, which before we couldn't do. You had to be into the enterprise plans if you wanted to have a phone system. Well, now you have the ability to add on phone systems inside the business plans. And aligning your business use case with the license that you need is huge there. And we would love to help you there if we can. We actually have a series on YouTube called Teams Tuesdays, where we talk about new features and things that have come to the platform, if anyone wanted to go look and subscribe. Or if you wanted us to have a conversation later, that's also something that we could do. So another big portion of managing and maintaining Microsoft Teams is seeing what are some other features inside the licensing that I currently have that I can go ahead and start utilizing it. And this there really gets into a conversation that we've been having for a while with a lot of our customers, and that is understanding the digital transformation journey. 10 years ago or so, everyone was talking about virtualization, a little bit before that actually. And then 5 years or so ago, people started talking about that transition into the cloud. Well, now this is a conversation that every organization is having. How does this play into our remote strategy, and how do we get there? And the Microsoft 365 suite, which Teams is a part of, is such a large part of this. And then there's additional features that you can layer on with Azure. And if you've already extended your identity into the cloud, it's consolidating consolidating that cloud identity to put policies around other things like the infrastructure as a service. And if you'd like to know more about the digital transformation journey, just please reach out, and we would love to contextualize how you can bring more of the services and features that you already have included inside of your suite to solve real problems for you in your organization. And kind of piggybacking off of that is talking about Microsoft Fast Track. Microsoft Fast Track is a benefit that Microsoft has, where if you already have some Office 365 licensing, but you don't necessarily have the IT expertise internally, where you can reach out to qualified and certified Microsoft 365 engineers to help give you that guidance. Today, we had a call where we walked through just some of the best practices and things that we've learned over some battle scars that we've had over the years when doing these types of migrations. But we have the ability included in your licensing for qualifying partners to have a more intimate conversation. If you wanted to talk with myself or some other members of the Microsoft Fast Track team, we are a Fast Track Ready partner. We're able to work with your team, have some free consultation and communication. And if there's a situation where you feel like, well, maybe even after the guidance, we still don't feel comfortable doing it ourselves, we have a whole consultation wing of the organization and engineers that can jump in and help you where you need for that skill set that you may not want to be building internally. So with that, I wanted to see if we have any questions that popped up in the chat and follow up with you guys.
Brian, that was an amazing presentation about how like Microsoft Teams is really, how they really utilize it for individual companies. Everybody kind of understands the gist of it, but really deploying it into your organization in a custom way is really kind of a hard battle for a lot of people. So thank you for that. We do have a few questions lined up for you. The first one is the security of the documents shared in Teams tied into the original security settings that were set up, or can they be best independently?
So wherever possible, you want to be utilizing the configuration that you've set up before. So if you're a HIPAA organization, for instance, and you've started putting in security policies to make sure that PII or EPHI isn't leaving your organization, in the background, Teams files is actually using SharePoint. So those policies that you've set up in data loss prevention is actually going to go into Teams. The Microsoft Security Center has all this information. You can configure it all from the same location.
Great. That's a good answer. The next question, what are some of the new privacy and security settings available within Teams?
Well, that's a great question. So by default, in Microsoft Teams, you're going to be able to communicate internally. You have private groups and public groups. And a public group is a group that everyone is going to be able to view the content and ask to be a part of it, and they know it's there. And then you have private groups where only the people inside the group are going to be able to contribute to that. In addition to that, external users, if your settings allow it, will allow you to bring external users to collaborate in your team as well. And they've added, since Teams started, private channels. So if you have a Microsoft team and you have several channels for the majority of the communication, but you want another channel that just a subset of the users in that team have access to, you can set up a private channel, and inside that channel, only people that are added to the private channel will have access. So there are a lot of different settings and configurations that you wanted to do. And because of the new private channeling, we've been able to replace and consolidate several systems where we're working with external we're working with external folks and able to have internal conversations inside that Teams without exposing things that we didn't want someone to have.
Right. Okay, good. Next question. What are some of the good ways to automate Office 365 and Microsoft Teams governance?
So a lot of the things that we talked about beforehand. So automating names of teams, automating retirement of teams, controlling who has the ability to create teams. There's reference documentation on the Office in the Microsoft Docs, and if you needed to be pointed in a very specific direction, just let us know and we can help track that down for you.
All right, perfect. Let's see if we have another question on board. I think we have hit our questions. I'd like to mention, thank you so much for kind of bringing out the whole how to deploy Microsoft Teams to all the organizations and all the information. And also, I just like to plug a little bit. If you're looking for tips, tricks, and features, we've launched a new Red River YouTube channel, a specific channel around Teams training that if you go to our YouTube channel, you should definitely check it out. It has great information about how to really utilize Microsoft Teams and all the new features that are coming out, as you know, almost weekly. But if you're really looking for a support in deploying or management of your Microsoft Teams journey, we'd love to have a conversation with you to understand a little bit more. We'd love to kind of help you succeed in launching Microsoft Teams. So again, thanks everybody for joining. Brian, thank you so much for all of your information, and we look forward to seeing more webinars with you on it. But if like I said, if you have any other questions, just contact Red River at redriver.com or directly to me at Gary Utley at redriver.com. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thanks for everyone for joining us today.